Okay, Eddie Heads, how you doing?
George, good evening.
You made it back to Maryland. We're here at the house here. You can see we got the shred house, and we're all moving everything in here. You're going to hear moving sounds in the background here, and but I was just on 60 Minutes.
Saw that.
Yeah. So again, no call. First thing you call for comment, right? That's journalism 101. Nothing about NATO. Giuseppe. Nothing about Giuseppe running intel for NATO. Nothing about him running the spy school for NATO in Germany. Nothing about Matt working at DOD as a liaison to the State Department and NATO. Nothing about Virginia, who wrote the plan for the Wellcome Trust.
The coronavirus response.
The coronavirus response. Nothing about that. Nothing about the long history of the Benassi's in weapons dealing in Europe. Nothing about Dutch cyclists on the U.S. team that used to work for the chief Allied Supreme Commander for NATO. None of that. I had done a story on them in 5 months, 4 months, ever since I started writing books. And you did a story on that when I lost my YouTube channel in May.
Yeah, back in beginning of the summer, yeah.
Yeah, so sold 10,000 books since then. So I'm just, I'm a little surprised. It's always the same thing. It's always when our group gets recognized for really good reporting. And you had the big story this week. Trump tweets your picture out down there at the Georgia Senate hearings, or somebody who looks like you and confused us, but you were there with Heather Mullen. Yeah. And then you got the big story at the sheriff's office with the Enterprise trucks.
Yeah, and I think it's almost 500,000 hits now.
Half a million views. And that they always want to knock you down. And then they want to say, you destroyed this guy's life, right? Donnie O'Sullivan in 2010 said I was a hoax peddler when I was in Ohio trying to find missing uranium. Then they bring in the FBI informant trying to divert our attention. They then find out it is an FBI informant, no retraction, 3 years later. Then he has the gall to do another hit piece 3 years later to compound the damage he did 3 years ago. And now, 60 Minutes, talking about 2:30, talking about how YouTube isn't policing. Well, YouTube has knocked this channel down, an African news agency. You're more than half native blood. So, you know, doesn't this seem like a strike, a preemptive strike on our group here before the big Trump? Sorry, big dialogue, but what do you think?
No, that was actually the first thing I said to you, George, was this seems like a preemptive action insofar as a anticipation of this coming week, like George said, with regards to the ballot trafficking story. And Patrick Byrne tweeted that out, and that really helped it blow up. And then it went on Gateway Pundit as well. So those two sources kind of put the magnifying glasses on that story, so to speak, which was really nice, really great of them. But
and Trump was looking for a casus belli. He was looking for the smoking gun. He was looking to say this is proof positive video, Zapruder film, and here comes Addy Ads. Boom, you provided it right before the big event.
Yeah, it was actually, it had been a few weeks that story had been out, and it was just kind of floating around in the ether. And as George said, my channel got nuked or whacked, as we say, got censored. And I don't think I've gotten an email yet even explaining why or what the reason for that was, which was quite unfortunate. But yeah, it was the story was out there, and then all of a sudden it just started picking up traction.
Do you know what video, 60 Minutes, as long as you guys don't want to do your own fact checking, don't want to make any calls, I'll give you the answer of why Addie's channels got whacked and mine got whacked. We were covering a woman whose house had been shot up. She was a whistleblower for the Georgia election. Check it out. Addie has the video. Addie published the video. 5 shots into her house. And then a second shooting between Christmas and New Year's. We're talking about 2 shootings. Where's 60 Minutes on this story? Addie Ads brought you both of those stories. And then your channel was whacked.
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate because, it was really my main focus for all last year. And how I met you, George, was my YouTube channel. But that's the link, is that a lot of people aren't seeing, is the ballot trafficking and then Amber Connor's interview. And I think that's what they're trying to prevent is people linking those together. The drive-by shooting on Christmas Day, and then just 2 or 3 days later, another shooting, but this time in the morning while one of the parents was gone as well. And I don't think they want to see people make those connections, George.
But she was a witness in she was going to be a witness in the Georgia Senate before they shuffled the order of the testimony, and she got shot at. The people who were on that witness list were given the runaround, and then later, all of a sudden, they're getting shot at in the night. So this is the story that 60 Minutes missed tonight. Unfortunately, they dug up an old story from May. No one has suffered more economically from getting that hit piece 3 years ago on me by Donnie O'Sullivan. Again, Donnie O'Sullivan's FBI informant, CNN's FBI informant, not my FBI informant. Peter Strzok's FBI informant, not mine. Any retraction ever that they fed that false story to me? Nope, no retraction. Who knows? Maybe even the Benassis, that was a setup when I was getting the doctors telling me in Fort Belvoir that the team had tested positive and she was patient zero. Maybe even that was fed to me. But again, this reminds me of the Nashville thing. We said the Nashville thing because the guy who was feeding me the information, the FBI informant feeding me the information back in Ohio, turned out later to have encouraged people to build bombs for the FBI. And he had encouraged the West Virginia militia to build bombs.
And the Nashville bomb, too. Let's remember, it was the same day as the shooting. So really coordinated.
Same day as your shooting. Your gal's shooting.
Yep. Yeah. Same exact day. So I think it was a coordinated effort, definitely, for distraction in terms of the Nashville government exercise, is what I'm calling it. And then the actual intimidation and actual kind of illicit actions that went on besides that as well.
But have you noticed how they keep talking about the girlfriend? Immediately, I published the guy's name. Took the FBI 2 more days to come up with, Anthony Quinn Warner's name.
Yeah.
I immediately published it. Immediately said the girl.
George beat the FBI.
Yeah, and I said, look, this is the Oconus lure thing, where they lure the girlfriend and they get the guy to do all this stuff. And I don't know what the girl from LA was doing, but wouldn't you normally, the way I do it is I go sit down with the girl, do an interview, of 60 Minutes type interview, sit down with the girl. How long was he telling you he was building bombs in the RV? Were you encouraging him to build bombs in the RV? A story came out today that he was sending information on how to build bombs to all these other people. Sounds like either he's an FBI informant that they decided to blow up, sort of a Lee Harvey Oswald story.
Dead men tell no tales.
Blow up the patsy, right? Blow up the guy who's your informant, which I still say was probably what happened. Because look how sparing the details are. It's always this drip, drip, drip with the FBI. Yeah. And it's always this make news stuff. And anyway, I just think it's very funny that the news channel, CBS, and 60 Minutes particularly, has the gall to call me a hoax peddler when they have said Donald Trump has worked for Russia for 4 years. Look at all the commercials they've sold and all the money they've made at CBS. Yeah. And 60 Minutes, the number one offender for hoax peddling, the gall to call me a hoax peddler. We call for facts. We checked on the NATO information. We published all the data to Twitter. Again, somebody hacked that conveniently right before this event. And we actually call for comment. And we look at the connections of people, and we go and ask for interviews. Nobody wants to talk at NATO. Virginia Benassi, it's a simple question. Do you know Matt Benassi and Macha Benassi? You're writing the response for all the world, for the Wellcome Trust, for COVID. You did it for Ebola. You did it for dengue fever. You did it for all the other outbreaks that seem to happen in Africa after Peter Strzok makes a visit there. So do you know Giuseppe Benassi, the guy who does the spy school in Germany for NATO? Do you know him? Have you ever met him? I just find it odd that a family with a long history like the Krupps, the Benassis are like the Krupps of Italy. And I find it interesting that they're all over this COVID story. So I just think there's more to the story. Now, I dropped that story 7 months ago. I lost the channel. I didn't say any more about it. The last thing we did here was in March. Didn't say any more about it. They're the ones that are bringing this up and dredging this up, not me. They're fighting back. They're fighting back too late. I lost my channel 9 months ago. Okay, I've been demonetized 1.5 years before that. I lost 4 years' work, 4,000 videos. Okay, plus the irreparable harm that CNN did, calling me, saying I had something to do with the Charleston thing. Even in the film, I say it's a drug dealer named Ibrahim and a drug dealer in the U.S. Congress named Imran Awan. And it's in a port called Norfolk. It has nothing to do with Charleston. They still won't print a retraction. 3.5 years later, 4 years later. Okay, we got to get going. We're setting up here.
I just want to add a
Sure.
addendum to the drive-by shooting. A couple people emailed me, a little dubious, got some doubters out there. But I do have a video of Mr. Connor and myself extracting just one of the bullets out from the side of the house in the eave there. So I'm going to be posting up that video later this evening. We got our tech master Andy DeBala getting us set up here, so I will put that video out. You'll see the bullet being extracted, and it'll be placed right in my hand, so people can see the proof.
And
of
he's
that.
willing to also go on camera, like Amber Connor was, and testify to this, right?
Yeah. He said I can use his face and his, what he said. He's more so the doer guy. He doesn't like to be on the camera, but he's certainly willing to do that, and he gave me permission to use that footage we took, so people can see that later this evening as well on Rumble, on UGE Tube, BitChute, and Brand New Tube. I'm just putting them all up there. I know George is focusing on the UGE Tube right now, so please go and subscribe to him on there as well.
Yeah, this is how journalism is done, where you actually go to the place and you actually talk to the people.
And you actually extract the bullet out yourself.
Yeah, and you're like the Dan Rather of this thing. And you, there you go. But you actually talk to people. If somebody reports that Giuseppe Manassi ran the spy school and he ran the spraying program for those other viruses in Africa, that's just a little close to home to all of a sudden be the first person. Remember, I didn't come up with the story originally. The Chinese foreign minister said the Americans brought it. The American team brought it. All I did was look at the people who were at who had reported to the Fort Belvoir as ill when they got back. So, and before, there was people that had shown symptoms before. Unknown flu, it was called then. Was that coronavirus? Was it not? Was it asymptomatic in her case? Was it not? She collapsed in the middle of a race because she was tired. But it also could have been an accident. You don't know. But the Chinese foreign minister was saying it. And there was this Dutch connection, Dutch origin, and this Dutch family going back years and years, generations and generations in NATO, since the beginning of NATO. Involved in the weapons business. And I just found all that too hard to not ask more questions. We were filming in this room, and it was a working session. I was writing up on a whiteboard. We weren't making accusations. We were workshopping.
It's before I even knew you, George. And like George said, this story was kind of put to bed before this was brought up.
Have I ever talked to you about it?
You have mentioned it once or twice.
But like I'm not pounding the...
No, we were moving on to other stuff. We were doing the Bob Dolinsky and the election stuff, and for many reasons. One of them being that it was dynamite, and George would get censored anywhere he said the last name, right, the B word. But now they're bringing it up again, and what do we have? We have one of our biggest weeks in recent memory here coming up. Big week.
And this happened the last time we did a charrette, this was in Michigan. And it was right before the election. And again, I'm sitting there in Michigan. We're about ready to go to the election. And boom, there's Matt again, Benassi again. He now admits he is a State Department and NATO liaison working at the Pentagon. Now he admits it. Okay, so my reporting was right. You are going to find he was at the Scott Air Force Base in bioweapon and chemical response and monitoring and response. And you are going to find that the other individual is also in, as far as the animal testing. So, this is a virus that stopped the world. Okay, this is a virus that's destroyed millions of people's lives in the United States alone. Deaths all over the world. If there's any dark hand here, if there's any NATO dark hand, even a hint that Donald Trump's bad for NATO and we're going to fix Donald Trump, even if that's a 1% chance, there is a journalistic responsibility to drill down on that and go and interview all these people and just say, isn't it kind of funny? How are you doing this response before the virus is even an international pandemic? Virginia Benassi, you're writing the welcome trust response to this coronavirus before it's even an international pandemic. How do you know that it was going to be an international pandemic? How did you have that foreknowledge? Do you know the guy who runs the spy school, Giuseppe Benassi? Do you or don't you? Those are easy questions, right? Or are you of Dutch origin? Ask to see if that reporting was right. Have you ever been to Fort Belvoir, which I know she worked as a security guard, right? And I know that's where she was going for health care. These are simple questions, right, that need to be answered. Are you familiar with a fort called Fort Meade, where they do a lot of testing of bioweapons? Were you aware that Fort Meade had a sister relationship with Fort Belvoir for bioweapons testing, for patient treatment? Were you aware of any of these things? No questions at all. Just, okay, here it is. George Webb, he's a conspiracy theorist. He's a hoax peddler. I'm not the conspiracy theorist. I agree 100% with Donald Trump in the assessment of 60 Minutes after dealing with them for 4 years. Remember, he was a darling of them before he became president. CBS, fake news. Fake news. I'm in complete 100% agreement with Donald Trump. How about you, Daddy?
Yeah, I agree. I'm in accordance with the Don as well. And, this fake news tactic of preemptive information, ammunition, really provisioning is what they're doing. So then they could reference back, in a few days from now and be like, oh, look, we already talked about this crazy guy, right? This crazy guy. So that's the plan here. And I think they're revealing their hand by doing that, George.
Yeah, and I think what happens is the first day, I get all the hate mail, and my child almost died, so I won't go into that after this happened. I had death threats from the guy down the Potomac here. He 5 miles away. He said he's going to Waco my family, Jones on my family, flamethrower my family. Ken Hale, thanks very much, Ken Hale. So did Donnie O'Sullivan cover any of those? I sent all those death threats to Donnie O'Sullivan at CNN. I said, here are the real death threats. You want the real death threats in this story? Look at these death threats to my family. Waco my family, Jones on my family, flamethrower my family, and I'm 5 minutes away. And then another text, about midnight on Saturday. I'm 5 minutes away. 2 witnesses to that, okay? That sounds like a threat. That sounds like somebody who's not just ideating a threat, but acting on a threat. Did Donnie O'Sullivan cover that? No, he skipped that. Instead, he tried to make me the bad guy and saying I was inspiring people to commit harm against the Benassis. I never want anything bad to happen to the Benassis. I reach out to Benassis all the time asking for comment. Finding it, I talked about her as patient zero because I was painting her as a victim. I was thinking these other Benassis, the ones in Europe, were the ones with the dark hand, that maybe said, hey, I know that, Cuz is going to be out there in Wuhan. Maybe we'll use her. I don't know what happened, but I do know one thing. It destroyed our world financial system. We might be going to, some wacky currency because of this. Can't go back to work. You're now a bioterrorist if you don't get the vaccine. You're asking us to swallow a lot. Can't we ask a few questions along the way, right? I never painted her out to be the bad person. I said patient zero, not conspirator zero. Patient zero. You can look at your own CBS film if you don't believe that. Thanks, Eddie Yads, for coming
George.
here. We're going to have a great week no matter what 60 Minutes is done.
Big week.
And I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much for being the great one. And thanks to Donald. Hey, Donald Trump, there's your new man right there. He got you the Zapruder film.
Yes, sir.
Of you getting screwed in Georgia, and you did a pretty good, damn good job in Michigan too.
Oh,
right, Andy?
Thank you,
Yes,
George.
sir.
Yeah, right. See, they're here from Michigan. So
I mean, I'm here for Eddie Ads more than I am for George Webb now. So
okay, you're
keep
done.
up the great work.
You're done. No, it's all good. It's all
I
good.
would not be here without George, and it's been quite a journey.
Thanks, Eddie Yads. Okay.
Go Browns.
Go Browns. Okay, thanks a lot. The Cleveland baseball team, not that. Yeah.
Stay frosty.
All right. Bye bye.